with some government entanglements you don't want, but from what I've gathered, there's a remedy for those entanglements that can turn out in your favor quite easily.
There you go. You look pretty.
Yeah, pretty weird.
I think. And oh, there. I'm also pretty weird. I guess everybody's celebrity number 14. I'm your host Neil Knightley, and today's joining us is Tim Freeman.
How's it going?
Can't complain.
Me neither.
I feel like I'm free. I don't have many complaints.
You feel like you're free. Wow.
Oh, yeah, I just decided to go for pho today, and then after pho, I decided to go running. Sounds like I have freedom of choice.
Freedom of choice might be intact in this country, but a few other rights have come under attack in the last couple of years, mostly under Harper's regime. For instance, our right to free speech, freedom of thought, freedom of association. It's being abrogated by acts like the TPP and Bill C-51, and basically, I think we've hit that point in the slippery slope where some people are going to have some decisions to make pretty quick as to what side of the line they're going to stand on when the next revolution starts.
I don't think people want to make that decision.
Oh, of course not. No, they've been well indoctrinated and pacified through public schools and then years of programming by television programs. And it's going to be difficult to wake up enough people to actually win this one. I do actually wonder if liberty's going to win the next war, or if oppression's going to reign supreme.
Yeah, it's a big question. I mean, I assume that oppression is going to reign supreme.
I wouldn't be so quick to, I would say, sell short the spirit left in humanity. I just don't know if we're going to be able to rally that spirit in time before it's, MRAP on every street and cops knocking on your doors telling you to get on the floor in your own house.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's now become a terrorist act to decide that you don't like what your government's doing to you. It doesn't get much more tyrannical than being forced to consent to a democratic government. I mean, to you, what does that word mean, free?
Yeah, I guess that's the big thing. I feel like I'm pretty much free to do whatever I want. I don't, except for I feel very constrained when it comes to all the Big Brother stuff, like having to wear your seatbelt and just bullshit laws that are controlling little pieces of your life. That's really annoying. You kind of forget about it though after a while, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, well that does make sense. Well, it's okay for someone to tell me what to do even though I'm a fucking adult.
That's exactly it. Okay, here's the thing. Who asks for permission to engage in a lawful activity? Something you know is fundamentally lawful. Who would ask for permission to engage in that activity?
Nobody. You don't have to because it's legal, right?
They would have to be a dependent child before, permission would be a requisite, right? They would have to ask their parents' permission because until the age of the majority, they are under their parents' law.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So once a person hits the age of the majority, who is to tell them that they're, obligated to ask for permission to engage in what is a fundamentally lawful action?
Mm-hmm.
For example, you have a right to travel. It says so in the Charter. It says so in the Constitution Act. It said so right at the beginning of our country. We have a right to travel any public road we wish.
Mm-hmm.
We also have the right to own property and to be secure in that property, whether it's documentation, a motor vehicle, a six-pack of beer, a little bag of weed. It's irrelevant. That's your charter-protected property. But along comes Big Brother and says, well, no. I say that this plant, which is by the way, been proven to be useful in too many fucking ways to count.
I say save the world.
I say that this is illegal because, I don't want to lose control of all my sheeple. So now I'm going to throw you in a cage for simply possessing a plant.
Mm-hmm.
A plant, okay, and here's another point. If in the Charter and the Constitution Act they claim that their laws are based on those of God, it said that God gave us dominion over the plants and animals. So who is another man to tell me that I may or may not partake of any plant that I can grow?
Right.
I look at freedom basically as, unless I've hurt you, hurt your reputation, without a good excuse, or caused loss or damage to your property, or committed fraud against you, or anyone else that is an actual person and not some corporation, unless there's a complaining party and an actual crime, I see it as my right to be left the fuck alone.
Mm-hmm.
That's...
Well, it's there for your own good. It's to keep you safe. You're not allowed to drink on the river because there's a possibility you could get too drunk and fall out of the boat and die.
It's not the government's job to protect me.
In fact, somebody probably has drank and drowned in the river, and that's why the law's there. It's to protect you so that you don't get hurt.
I wouldn't doubt that.
The government just cares about you, and they don't want you to get hurt.
Then why, instead of just simply telling me, hey, you can't do that, cut it out, do they decide then to dig into my pocket? Where does that come in? Explain that to me.
Well, because just like a kid, you gotta give a little slap on the wrist and be like, no, naughty, naughty. Like, it's for your own. Don't touch the stove.
Oh, okay. Let's play devil's advocate and say for a second that it's because the government cares, and then the fine is a part of that tough love, if you will. Okay, say in some alternate universe that I concede that point, which for the record I don't. Irrelevant. Say that I concede that point. Okay, the government's doing it for my own good. Why aren't those fines they're collecting going to better driving programs, perhaps paid for driving programs for all beginning drivers? Everybody gets the same course. Why isn't that being offered out of such a penalty, as opposed to it going to line some fat cat at City Hall or the provincial government or the Fed?
I'm pretty sure it goes to wars, which are also to protect you.
You want to get into the wars, okay? Okay. Aside from one reservist being shot, we've had zero terror activity in this country for how long?
Quite a while. But that's because they caught those guys in Toronto before they did everything.
I would be willing to bet that after committing treason by signing an agreement that allows foreign troops to police our streets in the event of a civil uprising, which Prime Minister Harper and Armed Forces General Mark Dumais signed with Russia and North Korea. Let's pause everything and actually examine that for a second.
Yeah.
What is the definition of the word treason? Do you know it?
No. We can look it up.
Okay.
Do you know the definition?
I do.
Well, then we might as well just...
The definition of treason is to commit an act of war or preparatory thereto against your own country. Now, to your mind, if the Prime Minister and a general in our armed forces have signed a deal with foreign military interests to allow them to police our streets under any circumstances, is not an act of war or preparatory thereto towards Canada, what would constitute treason if that doesn't? Yet, we trade away piece after piece after piece of our liberty, our freedom, our right to do whatever the hell we want, so long as we ain't hurting no one. We trade it all away for this security, and it's a false security. And I'll give you an example of that. In Calgary, not that long ago, there was a young man by the name of Anthony Heffernan. Anthony Heffernan was staying at a motel here in Calgary, and police went to do a welfare check, and I say that sarcastically. They went to do a welfare check on Mr. Heffernan, and rather than, preventing violence and preventing an escalation of the situation like any responsible public servant should, they shot the man in the face 3 times. That's here in our own city, man. Up in Dawson Creek, a protester at a dam site meeting. This dam site threatens to take land away from families who had it for generations. From Dawson all the damn way down to the Okanagan. Okay, just steals a shit ton of land from people. And one protester decides to put on a Guy Fawkes mask, the anonymous mask, and police there shot him to death. What the shit is going on in this country that this doesn't outrage us?
I don't think most people know about it. I didn't know.
Wow, that one actually did hit mainstream media, the Dawson Creek.
Oh yeah, I don't watch mainstream media.
Oh, I don't either. But when I watched the clip of footage from the actual shooting off of my Facebook and YouTube accounts, train of thought derailed.
So is that officer under any sort of investigation?
As far as I understand, he was cleared.
Yeah, well, probably. I mean, the guy had a mask on.
Well, so what?
Well, it's
inciting. To wear a mask?
It's inciting violence.
No, it's not. It's inciting anonymity, which we have a right to.
It incited some violence.
Oh yeah, well, from public servants who could just as easily have tasered the young man or pepper sprayed him. They did not have to resort to lethal force for a little 2.5-inch pocket knife. If you're that much of a fucking coward, please turn in your badge.
Oh, a lot of them are very scared people. That's why so many shootings happen.
Well, it's because the police departments in this country, and to some extent parts of the military as well, they will actually go out of their way to recruit and hire people of a lower IQ who will be all too happy to just blindly follow whatever order they're given.
I wanted to get back to the thing that Harper signed with Russia and North Korea to let their foreign troops come.
In the event that Canada has a civil up, and this is just my understanding of it, I haven't been able to properly investigate all of this. Of course, anything military, you usually looking at so much red tape through freedom of information and whatnot. But essentially, as I understand it, what it'll be is if you and I, the citizens of this nation, ever decide that we want to abolish our government and they decide they're not going to let themselves be abolished, well, then it becomes civil war. And in the event that that happens, obviously they would be committing such overt treason, it's not even funny to use our own forces against us. But through various legal maneuverings, they found a way now to let other people, other nations rather, send their armies in to keep us at bay if we decide.
Well, that's what I would assume, that he would have signed that with America, not North Korea and Russia.
Well, and again, I haven't fully researched that myself, but it's feasible at the very least, and that is. that to me is more than enough cause for concern with the current power structure.
It's pretty concerning, yeah.
Yeah. You get things like provinces and cities. Now they're trying to pass ever more intrusive legislation, and it's getting to the point where you almost can't have a cigarette in your own damn house if you're a parent, or can you pass gas in the wrong part of town. It's, for example, this Tobacco Reduction Act, this just retarded piece of legislation, in which, by the way, they mostly focus on jacking up the prices of tobacco as a deterrent and a healthcare tax. Well, okay, if I'm paying a healthcare tax there, then why do I still get a goddamn ambulance bill every time I'm, dying and need a lift to the hospital?
Mm-hmm.
If you're gonna start charging me that much, and I say this somewhat in jest, but if that's the case, then I know a lot of non-smokers who kind of owe me some rebates.
I know, it's so ridiculous the way they just try and tell you what to do all the time with the flavored tobacco.
Oh, and then right.
What the fuck is that? I don't get it at all. But the fact that almost immediately they had those Camel Crush things where
I love those,
and it just gets, and it's the exact same thing.
But it's not in the tobacco.
Yeah, and people just find a way around dumb laws. Like, why even bother spending time?
Good people don't need new laws. They don't. And bad people will always find a way to circumvent whatever you write.
Mm-hmm.
And here's another thing, okay? Let's look at the fundamental tenets of being a free man. We discussed the three golden rules, as I like to call them. You do no harm, you cause no loss or damage to property, you don't commit fraud. Okay, so if you say you're going to do something, you do it.
Really, you can just sum that up to don't be a dick.
In this day and age, yes, that would be the vernacular. Unfortunately, I wish we still had a little bit of eloquence in the English language. It's turned pretty gritty.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I like that as a hashtag. Don't be a dick. Hashtag don't be a dick.
Should go and slap "Don't be a dick" stickers on every cop car in the city.
Nice.
No,
well, that's destruction of property.
Okay, so with the three golden rules in mind, let's look at what it truly is to feel and think as a free man does. Does the government own me? In your opinion, does the government own you?
No.
No. You're your own property, your own person, free to do as you please, so long as you don't harm anybody, right?
For the most part, yeah.
Okay, so how is it then that a government can come to govern you?
I was just born here.
Oh, so just being born inside of an arbitrary line on a map automatically means that the government has a right to tell you what you may or may not do?
If you're within the imaginary circle.
What if I told you that the power of the government is drawn 100% purely from the consent of the governed, and it says so in the founding laws of our nation?
I would just... I don't know.
Would it not raise some questions in your mind as to whether or not perhaps you could revoke your consent to being governed and what that might mean?
Well, I have a little bit recently.
Yeah.
But before that, I definitely didn't really think about it. I just thought about all the ways that I'm not free and didn't really think that there was an option.
Well, you would definitely wonder about things like that.
If you're born on the planet, you're going to be within somebody's imaginary circle, and even if you move to another imaginary circle,
but if
that's
you're
going to
not
be it there.
that imaginary circle's property,
Mm-hmm.
there's only one way that they can govern you and still claim to be a free country, right? And that's by your consent.
Mm.
Our founding fathers knew that government forced onto people was the very definition of tyranny. That's why the Constitution Act and the Charter are worded as they are. It says in the Charter that this law is the supreme law, the superior law in this country, and any acts or statutes passed that are inconsistent with the Charter, to the extent of their inconsistency, they're of no force or effect. Okay, so the government telling me that I have to insure and register my vehicle, to my mind, that means they're now twice violating my right to freedom of association by forcing me into contract with, two different corporations, one being the province and the other being the insurance company.
But you have to have insurance. What if you hit somebody?
Well, my case is a little bit different. I
didn't mean you specifically, but what if said person who doesn't have insurance hit somebody.
Well, the thing about not being governed by the government, okay?
Mm-hmm.
When you are under the federal employee ID number, which is what a social insurance number is.
Right.
Let's not kid ourselves. When you're operating under that, you have what is called limited commercial liability. Okay, it's the same thing when you get the policy on your vehicle. You got a limited liability policy, yes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then you're not fully responsible for your actions.
Mm-hmm.
So if you cause the accident, if you are the cause of the accident, then it would be incumbent on you one way or another to make it right. And if you couldn't, well, the penalties would be much stiffer. Because again, you're standing under full personal liability, meaning you fully account for everything you do and everything you say, and you mean all of it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? If you're insured,
It's the exact same reason why people incorporate, so that they have this thing that they're not fully responsible for all the time.
Yeah. And in the meantime, anywhere between 5 to 10% of their income is going to pay for these stupid insurance policies. And here's the funny part. You and I have to have these left and right. But our elected officials are completely indemnified against shit like this. And if they blow through a red light and kill somebody, the penalty is somehow different because they're thinking of themselves as a ruling class, or what?
It's because they're important, so they have to be in, the outside so they can help run things.
Yeah, that doesn't sit with me.
Okay.
I think transparency and accountability are key to any government that's actually going to represent the interests of the people.
Absolutely. So let's go to back to the travel thing. When they made the charter, they had horses.
That's irrelevant.
So the Motor Vehicle Act had to come in afterwards because, horses didn't have motors. It was much safer to get drunk and drive your horse than it is to get drunk and drive a vehicle, especially uninsured.
Okay. I don't advocate drinking and driving.
Yeah, I know. I was taking it to an extreme.
I don't advocate running through red lights. I don't advocate
of course,
being a dick.
Yeah. Just because you're a free man doesn't mean you go around being a dick. The point is, don't be a dick.
Yeah. Yeah, and I had to learn that in the first little while after I severed my ties with government. It was a razor's edge for me as to whether or not I could be caught for disturbing the peace, which is, a common law offense that anyone can be picked up for. It's still the catch-all, but I'm hoping in Canada 2.0 we decide to eliminate, any implied right for police to intrude upon a person's privacy without a lawful excuse.
Right. But back to the traveling thing.
Yeah.
So technology has undeniably changed the world.
Yeah. Okay.
Should there be another charter written, perhaps?
No, because that, again, is not what our founding fathers had in mind.
Right, but they didn't have this in mind.
They may not have anticipated or accounted for automobiles, but here's the thing, okay? Rather than hiding under the government's skirts and going, protect us from the whatever boogeyman, insert boogeyman here, okay?
The gay Muslims.
Sure, the gay Muslims. Protect us from the gay Muslims, all right? The uninsured gay Muslims.
Yeah.
Instead of hiding under the government's skirts, if each and every one of us was to just exercise that little bit of care and caution and suppress that road rage and, drive as if hitting someone could result in an attempted murder charge, because for me it can.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm deemed to be the cause of an accident,
mm-hmm.
I can actually get charged with attempted murder.
Right.
Because I'm under full personal liability.
Mm-hmm.
And that thing's a 4,000-pound deadly weapon,
mm-hmm.
right?
That makes sense.
Okay.
That definitely answers one of the questions that I had for you before you came in. But, you know, how do you get away with, like, not get away with it? I mean, like, what are the legal
ramifications?
Yeah.
Yes, there are some things that are different for me than for the average citizen, and
because you don't have a corporate identity to shield you from that shit.
That's right. So in each and every instance, say like,
can you not insure your person yourself, like
not without the use of that federal employee ID.
Oh, you need the federal employee number.
Yes, and if you start dancing back and forth between I use it, I don't, I use it, I don't, what can happen is straight out that constitutes fraud.
Yeah.
I'm your subject, I'm not your subject. I'm your subject,
Yeah.
I'm not your subject. It doesn't work like that.
So what about the hospital? How does the hospital work?
Well, I've never had a problem. I just give them my name and birth date and my address, tell them I don't have a card, they run me through.
Oh, yeah. That makes sense. Because it's Canada, right?
Yeah. Socialized healthcare, gotta love it. And quite
they assume
frankly,
everybody's an employee of the state, so right this way, Mr. Freeman.
No, and I haven't had to go to the hospital too much in the last little while. Fortunately, the big thing for us really is travel. I read an article online recently regarding, the title of it was A Freeman Success Story. And this Freeman's idea of a success story is actually quite laughable to me. He does not engage in his right to travel with his property. He does not choose to get paid in banknotes or dollar bills, you know. Mm-hmm. He lives apparently somewhere off in the sticks, just avoids all human contact and thinks that that's the fullest extent to which he can flex his rights, and that's a little sad to me. I got a video on YouTube, you know it, it's called RCMP Epic Fail, and in this one, there's a component of luck there, but I think obviously I pressed on some key tenets well enough that 6 RCMP officers were forced to let me drive away, despite the fact that I was high on a quarter ounce of mushrooms and had no license plates on my van. Not too many in this nation can make that boast.
You had insurance, though, at that time?
At that time. Well, basically, I did this...
That was kind of in the beginning, or...?
What I did was, I wanted to test the theory more than anything. Mm-hmm. So, the day before, I had gone into the local RCMP detachment. And I gave them the stack of Freeman paperwork. You know, it's a fucking inch thick that I, edited, because there were parts of what Robert Menard put out that I just straight up did not believe it were right. Mm-hmm. But anyway, I served them my notice of intent and understanding and my claim of right. And the next night, I tried to get them to pick me up on an outstanding traffic warrant or something. They wouldn't do that. I finally found a DUI check stop, so I quickly pulled over. I yanked the plates off my vehicle, and I rolled through with my iPod, and right from the word go, I just asserted that I was not the government's property, and that I would be charging a fee for any of my time that they decided they wanted to waste that evening.
It's a pretty funny video, yeah. It's pretty crazy. That's what... I ended up going home that night and just passing out twice while looking up information. I was down a deep rabbit hole that night. What the fuck? How does this happen? Like, what is this?
Yeah, seriously, how did you get away with that?
So how did you get to here? We like hearing the beginning stories on this show. We like hearing what happened to kind of, because there's usually a switch. There's something that happens that sends someone down a different path.
You want to know my switch? My switch is very easy to recollect. It was about 4.5, just about 5 years ago in Medicine Hat. I was cleaning my apartment, 2:30 in the afternoon. Perfectly reasonable time to have your music turn up so you can hear it while you're cleaning around the whole place, right? I don't want to call them officers. That seems like far too respectful a term for what was done to me. So I'm going to say 2 pigs in tactical gear walked into my fucking home at 2:30 in the afternoon without a warrant. Didn't identify themselves as police while they were knocking. They were knocking to the rhythm of the music. So I ignored them. Went back to cleaning. And they just walked into my home and proceeded to point weapons at me and tell me to produce identification, which, as far as I can tell through all my research of Canada's laws, I'm not even obligated to possess, much less produce in my own goddamn house. And that was the moment when I started to look at...
So you looked into that. You're like, do I really have to give these assholes ID? Like, do I have to have ID?
Yeah.
What would you find out about that? You don't have to have ID?
No, there's nothing in any law in this nation that states that you're obligated to own a piece of identification.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it says on ID that you must deliver it upon request, that it's the property of the state, more or less, but if you don't possess such a thing, or even if you do, I mean, you're not obligated to admit to possessing it.
Mm.
You're not obligated to whip it out in your own damn house, especially not obligated to do so.
You don't have to carry your
listening
papers.
to some music at 2 in the afternoon.
You don't have to carry your papers around like a dog.
No, this isn't Nazi fucking Germany. No one has any obligation to actually own a piece of ID. And if a cop tries to get you to give your name and birth date and address when you're walking down the street or you're a passenger in a vehicle, you have absolutely no obligation to entertain that notion unless they can articulate clearly that you have committed some kind of offense.
Well, I've watched a lot of movies, and loud music usually means someone's getting killed. So you got to investigate.
Yeah.
And then, hey, while I'm here, you might as well show me your papers.
Yeah, no. And actually, the neighbor that called the cops on me was just an ornery old cunt. He actually wound up getting arrested about a week later for repeated abuse of 911. So.
Yeah, well, I guess he still had his place in the universe because he sent you down this path, right?
Yeah, he definitely sent me down this path. He sent me down this path with a little bit of a vengeance. I gotta say that kind of shook me. I mean, at what point did I unknowingly surrender my right to be safe and secure in my own home, much less from government fucking agents?
Yeah.
I don't care what they think might have been happening, unless they had evidence of an offense, which even by their stupid bylaws, at 2:30 in the afternoon, playing my music is not an offense.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So if that's the case, then, how long and when was that right usurped from us? And why are more people not upset about that?
Because they're not a part of it. It doesn't happen to them. It doesn't happen to anyone they know.
It doesn't happen to them yet.
Yeah, but they can't see that. The government is there for your own good, and the things that it tells you not to do is for the general protection of everybody, and that's how it is. You gotta have the government to keep everyone in line.
Yeah, no, I seem to recall the age of decency being one where scoundrels were just strung up in the street, and that was that. And the rest of us just acted decent towards one another. Because ever since we started coddling rapists and murderers in prison and paying for their stay there, society has declined. You didn't hear about a whole lot of cops doing kiddie porn or anything else like that back in the true age of decency, because we took people like that out behind the woodshed and beat them, and if that didn't work, then somehow they just got took care of.
Yeah.
We eliminated the scum of our society, and I'm not necessarily advocating that we instantly hang anyone who's had an accusation hurled, but if it can be demonstrably proven that someone's a nuisance to society, exile. That's how it works.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let's see how you do in, Thailand, you little fucker. Bet you get your throat slit. We don't need government interference. There's nothing that the government provides that you or I or us as a community can't provide for ourselves.
You just have to have everybody
roads.
on board.
Yeah. And, if you want to pass through a certain community, you might have to pay a toll to use their roads, especially if you're hauling heavy shit, But,
I don't think it's not going to happen. The general population feels very safe and secure. They're willing to give up some freedoms because they're like, that doesn't even affect me because I'm a good person and good people, and those laws are for bad people. So I don't care if the government looks at my emails because I'm just emailing Jimmy about coming over for a barbecue and a beer on Sunday.
Yeah. That is a very typical statist line of thought. If you're doing nothing wrong, you've got nothing to worry about. There was a judge in our Supreme Court. I don't remember his name, but I remember a very poignant quote from him. Everybody has something to hide. Were this not the case, we wouldn't need a right to privacy.
That's pretty good.
Okay. So, if we're going off of that, the theory that everyone's got at least something to hide, then it stands to reason that everybody would want to have a right to privacy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it could be a weird kink you got or whatever it is you've got to hide. Me, I'm a fucking pothead. Through and through. I'll smoke my ass off all day long. But, where were we?
What was I saying, man? That couldn't have been timed out any better. The judge.
Yes, judge said everyone's got something to hide. Otherwise, we wouldn't need a right to privacy. That makes sense to me.
That makes a lot of sense. That's pretty funny.
It doesn't matter what your kink is. You're still entitled to be private as long as your, little bit of secret isn't harming anyone.
Mm-hmm.
Let me tell you something. I've worked, before I became a Freeman, I worked a lot of time on our roadways doing deliveries, hot shots and fast food delivery.
Mm-hmm.
And I've dealt with a lot of law enforcement officers. A lot of them have just been this rampant power trip. Like, you need to submit, otherwise there are consequences, and I don't think that's what our founding fathers had in mind for us.
No.
It's certainly not what I want for my son. It's probably not what you want for your kid. Congrats on that, by the way.
Thank you. They are definitely not used to someone standing up to them, eh?
No, and then they just had no idea what to do with me in that video. No idea whatsoever. At one point, I was standing there with the one officer, Ferguson, I think was his name, and he's sitting there telling me I got to uncover my VIN number so that he can read it, and I'm just, you've got no right. You have no right to know who this vehicle belongs to unless you're accusing me of theft. Move along.
Mm-hmm.
And you could see his left hand twitching, and what you can't see in the video is that hand was holding a baton already extended. Mm-hmm. He was itching to use that on me, and I swear to you, if I hadn't had that camera in their faces, that would have ended so differently.
Definitely.
But it's strange to me, because one of the first things I heard the officer say in this video, as they're standing off to the side having, I forget whether it was their first or their second power, they're standing off there, I heard Ferguson say to his colleagues, "This is a Freeman. I've never dealt with one of these before. How do I get him?" And it was, in particular, the use of the words "get him" that got my interest. I'm like, okay, this definitely falls under the category of conspiracy. Mm-hmm. Because they're now looking for a way to make me look uncredible because of my beliefs. Now, whatever happened to their oath that they would fairly, diligently, and impartially discharge their duty?
They're part of the system, though. They don't understand you. They don't understand this thing that's not part of the system. It's like...
But when someone takes the time to say to them, hey, I'm not a child of the province. I am not your government's property. Prove to me that I have to ask permission to engage in my right to travel and to bring my property with me. Otherwise, piss off.
How often do you get pulled over? Because you ride without a plate, right?
I did for quite a while, yes.
How often? Like, what was the average during that time?
After that first video was shot, they pulled me over one other time. And when I put the camera in their face, it was just a little banter back and forth, and they fucked off back to their car and let me be. But then they came up to me in the local bar at Spike's Pub in Dawson while I was sitting with some friends, and told me that, you know, if I ever hit somebody, that I would be charged with attempted murder because I'm unplated, you know, unlicensed, uninsured, yada yada yada. And I had to pause at that for a second, because this meant that the basic tenets of this belief system are most likely correct. That in fact you can revoke your consent to being represented by the government, and if they don't represent you, that the rules of their government can't legally be applied against you. In theory, now the only things you can do to get in trouble with the law are to, you know, be a clear and present danger, or to be suspected of or caught in the act of committing an actual offense.
So if you come floating with me in the summer, you can drink on the river because you're a free man.
Well, I don't drink to begin with, but yes.
A lot of these are just hypothetical.
Put it to you this way: after I shot that video, I drove around Dawson Creek for probably about a month, and didn't have any plates on. You know, I had a frosty brew in the console, a doobie twisted up.
They were trying to figure out how to deal with you. Have you watched any of the other videos online of guys that get pulled over?
Yeah, I have.
The difference I find is that the documentation. You give them the document, so you don't. The other guys have to sit there and argue back and forth, and they don't even get the chance to explain what's going on. You're just like, here, go figure it out, and so they kind of F off a bit.
Well, and anyone from, anyone who's listening to the podcast who might decide to check out the video, RCMP Epic Fail, the document he's referring to is a sworn affidavit, which is notarized, basically stating this vehicle belongs to me. I'm not the property of your government. If you insist on forcing me into statutory obligations based on contracts I no longer hold with your government, this is the fee. And from the moment he laid eyes on that, he says to me, well, okay, do you have a driver's license? No.
How much is the fee?
We'll get into a fee schedule later.
Okay.
It's one of the things that Robert Menard did that I just totally don't agree with.
Oh, so it's an old.
Well,
thing.
I don't agree with what it's been turned into.
Oh, okay,
I should say. Well, again, we'll get into the fee schedule later. So anyway, he asked me, do I have a driver's license? I look at him a little cross-eyed and I go, no. Why would I want to trade my God-given rights for benefits and privileges, sir?
See, now, he doesn't understand what you just said. Most people don't understand what you just said.
Okay, well, here's how that works. When you sign a contract with the government, like applying for a federal employee ID or
a birth certificate,
a permission to travel, or aka a driver's license,
health card, these are all contracts with the
what you're
state.
doing, if you were to ever read the fine print, I'm sure you'd be able to find some clues as to where your rights are being usurped. But essentially what you're doing is you're trading all of your inalienable rights, your right to privacy, your right to property, your right to security of person, papers, and effects, your right to travel. You're trading them away. They are unalienable. Now, the definition of unalienable means no one can take this from you. They are enshrined in the Charter and protected. The only way these can be taken from you is by your consent. When you apply for these, when you sign these contracts, you're trading your rights, which no one can take, for a benefit or a privilege which can be regulated and revoked. Driver's license, can be regulated and revoked.
Right.
Passport, all the shit that you ask for,
Mm-hmm.
they can be like, well, you're being a petulant child, that's mine.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the same thing when you register your child or your motor vehicle, you're splitting the title. Okay, you're giving the government legal title while you keep the equitable.
Mm-hmm.
And in essence, it goes from your private property to a registered motor vehicle, and now they can tell you what you may or may not do with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you give your consent to be governed, and you get to enjoy all the wonderful things of the modern life, and you just have a few rules that are really just there for your own good anyway. I can't see...
I don't agree with that.
Of course not.
And I bet you Dr. Simona Thibault would not agree with that either.
I doubt that I could even repeat her name.
Would you like to know who she is?
Yes, please, sir.
Dr. Simona
Would you like
Thibault.
a drink, or...
Yeah, can we pause and maybe do a cigarette and a piss and...
Oh, yeah.
And we'll come back and talk about the doctor?
The doctor.
You're gonna like this, because when this incident happened, her and I were in contact not long after.
And we're back.
Okay. So,
Dr. Duhula Hulala?
Dr. Simona Thibault.
I didn't think I'd be able to say it twice. Or even once.
Okay.
How do you spell it?
Simona-Tibu.
I didn't hear any of that. Oh, wait. I gotta do the cool thing. Shit. That was the whole point of this. Do.
There we go.
Doctor what?
Simona Thibault. Tibu. Not Tebow.
T-I...
Bu. Oh, look at that.
She was guilty of assaulting a police officer and resisting arrest.
Oh, that's the official story. I thought you didn't read the official line. That's a CBC site.
Well, how about you tell me what version you think you know, and then we'll go to the CBC.
Well, and I've actually spoken to Dr. Thibault. That's where I have an insight that perhaps you're not going to find online here.
All right.
Now, when I first, I can't remember where it was. There was either YouTube or Facebook. I saw an article about this Alberta dentist who was beaten half to death by an Alberta sheriff at the side of the highway. When I spoke to her, she's a very sweet, gentle-natured lady, fairly trusting, seems well-adjusted, not too wacky, which is saying something in this day and age. But I digress. The story she relayed to me, and I wasn't there, so I can't, confirm or deny any of this, but the story I got is she was going like 20 over the limit, which I don't know too many people who don't do that these days. She was doing 20 over the limit, and Alberta Sheriff Sergeant Beheels, Beheils, pulled her over, and he came across as very aggressive to her. She worried for her safety and told Beheils that she was going to record the interaction, at which point she was violently pulled out of her private property and assaulted, and to her claim she was also sexually assaulted by this public servant. Excuse me, beer burps. When I spoke to her, I tried to get her to challenge the jurisdiction of the court, to ask if there was any proof that she had ever consented to, be governed under yada 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 yada. She obviously went with a traditional lawyer who told her to take a plea deal, and the end result, of course, was that her life and career and reputation are now irrevocably fucked thanks to a stupid statute. And now you understand why. I hope at least you understand why I don't see any need for our government.
She wasn't vigilant enough. She should have sneakily locked her doors and called 911, so it's recorded.
Oh, you think without without a camera in his face, that would have stopped Beheels from using a weapon against her, whether it be a baton or a taser or a pistol.
No. But if the door's locked, but yeah, they're just going to smash the window, right?
Or open fire on her.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, I saw something in her hand.
Yeah.
I feared for my life.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm getting sick and fucking tired of hearing about these paid public servants fearing for their lives and taking the lives they've sworn to protect.
I find that happens a lot because people talk about, they can't do this because they don't have the right to and shit. But when you're in the situation, they just find a way to justify it. It's not a big deal. Your rights are not a big blockade for them to fuck with you and do whatever they want.
And that's why I advocate at all times having dashboard cams, cell phone cameras rolling every time a police officer approaches you. It's your right.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter what threat they throw at you, even if they threaten to charge you under the wiretapping laws. Anyone listening to this podcast, please feel free to inform that officer that the law here in Canada clearly states any one party who consents to the conversation being recorded may do so, even surreptitiously.
What's surreptitiously mean?
In secret. You don't have to tell them you're recording.
Oh, you don't?
As long as you're a party to the conversation,
mm-hmm.
you can record either overtly or covertly. That's your right.
Really?
As long as you are a party to the conversation. That's what the wiretapping laws state, and I urge anyone who listens to this to exercise that bit of knowledge.
I think that's a big problem, is there's nowhere to find these simple, concrete things because it's buried in a bunch of stuff, right? Like, there needs to be a spokesman for the Freemen that are not dicks, like this guy that we had over here. Let's fucking check this guy out. He just basically... he said he was a Freeman, and then he changed the locks on his apartment from the owner and changed it so the owner can't get in. They can't kick him out but he's being a dick. He's not really a Freeman, right?
Yeah, no, he's not. He's what we call fraudulent. The only way that theory could even begin to work is if you hold title or deed to a piece of land, and again, that's a bit of a dangerous. Let's say you own a piece of land when you decide to become a Freeman. You could, at that point, build yourself a 10-foot wall and put up signs that say no government agents except by the express written consent of the Governor General. Then you can declare yourself an embassy, a sovereign nation unto yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine. It's not an invitation. Being a free man, it's not an invitation to seize someone else's hard-earned property, or to do things that are blatantly dangerous or that are obviously going to disturb the peace. Do I believe I have a right to own firearms without the government's permission? Absolutely. Do I believe I have a right to walk through town with those firearms bared and making people nervous? Not for a second. Do I have a right to travel in my vehicle without asking anyone's permission or engaging in contracts with other companies before I do so? Absolutely. Do I for 1 second think I have a right to drive recklessly, run through stop signs and red lights, and generally be a dick? No, not for 1 second.
See, the problem is that it's a lot like the conspiracy theories. The wackos kind of muddy the water for the actual trueness of it.
Well, and that's exactly it. I mean, you've got, this Yahoo from Edmonton. What's his name there? Mario Antonacci or Andreas Pirelli.
Yeah, Andreas Pirelli.
This
picture.
The guy looks like a 1980s coke dealer.
Yeah, he's just doing it to be a dick. I don't want to pay taxes. I don't want to pay rent. Well, I'll just be a free man.
Okay, here's the deal. If you're going to stay in someone else's home and you contract with them to pay a certain amount per month to stay in their private property, you honor that contract. to change the lock on someone else's private property, call it your embassy, and decide you're just going to live rent free. That's called fraud.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We don't do that. If you're a Freeman, you don't do that. You stand up for your right to have a piece of plant matter rolled up in a white paper because, God damn it, that's your plant. It's your property. Your property being the key phrase there. Okay, you can't just go and take what you haven't earned. That's called theft.
It's interesting that religious people go along with the weed prohibition, because you would think that that's the beginning of the Bible.
We
basically.
discussed this earlier. Yes, right there in Genesis. Okay, if our laws are founded on God's word, and God gave you and I dominion over plants and animals. I mean, the government doesn't try and tell us we can't have an animal to eat or to wear. It says we have to kill it humanely, but that's just common fucking sense. Okay? What really gets my goat is where the government decides to step in and try and regulate, every little facet of my life. Now suddenly I'm not allowed to say anything anti-government on my Facebook page because that's offensive to the powers that be. Well, I'm sorry. Those powers only be because of our consent.
Mm-hmm.
If they did not have a consenting mass, they would not exist. But just because, a couple 100 million other people go along with that system does not mean that I'm obligated to.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get, the argument that, well, if that's the case, you should just fuck off into the woods and never be seen again. Remove yourself from the gene pool by all means. That's actually a message I got over my video.
Mm. I noticed some of the retarded comments on that video.
Oh, I know. Get over yourselves, people. Just because you wouldn't ever grow the balls to do what I did doesn't mean I was wrong to do it. You know
What's that quote? It's like you can't be free if you don't know you're in jail. That's paraphrase of it. I forget how it went.
Yeah,
I'm a stoner.
Tip of my tongue. I know what you're talking about.
You got me high before the show. My brain's not fucking working. Now, okay, here's something. So, do you feel that if these systems, say, of policing, if that was actually doing what it's supposed to do with the original good thought behind it all, and it was perfect how it was, let's just say, however you think they should act, that's how they're doing it.
You're wondering what that would look like?
Well, no, I'm not wondering what that would look like. I'm just saying it feels like you don't necessarily have a problem with being governed, but they've gone too far. So in protest of that going too far, you've gone to the other end.
And so I now withdraw my consent.
Yeah.
Prove to me that I can't.
Yeah. But you don't really have a problem with policing if it was what it should be. You don't have a problem with universal health care, and you don't have a problem with these social things. It's just they've gone too far in invading, and this is you pushing back and being like, you don't have my consent.
I'll give you another example, okay? I was once assaulted. I called on the police for help. Okay? Now, rather than being treated as, the innocent party and the victim, which I was, it was demonstrable. What happened is I was treated like a criminal. My name run, my, background checked, and for what cause?
Your hair's blue.
This has only been blue for a month. I'm talking about incidents that happened eons ago, long before my hair got long.
Continue.
You're
completely right.
What gives these servants, and then let's not kid ourselves, they are sworn public servants.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to apply trust law to the situation, you and I were the executor and beneficiary. We are the directors of this nation.
They're not there to serve you, though. They're there to serve the public.
No, they're not. That's the problem. We need to break this misconception because they're not even there to serve the public. They're there to serve the government.
Mm-hmm.
And the government's key interest is what?
Looking out for you.
No. They want you to believe that that's what it is. The truth is the government's key interest is treating you like a piggy bank.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, why would you be, extorted at the side of the road? Okay, I'll give you an example of this extortion.
Yeah, there you go.
I'll give you an example of this extortion, okay? Let's say a father of 5, my brother, for example. I won't give his name, but my brother had an outstanding ticket.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Now, rather than, being like a good parent, as you supposed earlier, as you posited earlier, rather than being a good parent, the government then decides that they're going to arrest my brother over a simple drunk in public fine, and he's in jail for 3-4 days. Okay, 3-4 days. He's not providing for his 5 children. He's not earning anything to pay this fine, and the government is now having to pay to keep him in jail for this pay or stay policy they have. Explain to me how that makes sense, that you, the taxpayer, are paying over $1,000 a day to house someone who owes a $200-$300 fine.
They don't really think about it like that.
Here's why. It's not just about collecting revenue. The dumb sheeple that just, here you go. They provide a certain amount of money. But what really brings in the dough is this prison industrial complex, these debtor's prison rules that we live by in this province nowadays.
We have private... I thought it was private prisons that... We have private prisons in Alberta?
They don't have to be private. They're owned by the government, okay? But the government
claims...
is getting X amount for each offender they keep off the streets. Now, under a bunch of bullshit little statutes, they've managed to raise the crime rates. Oh my God, we have more criminals here. We need to build bigger prisons. We need to more jails. They create these statutes to falsify the numbers, to justify more officers, more jails, more laws.
Mm-hmm. More jobs.
Doesn't make it right.
Creating jobs.
Doesn't make it right. And that's what I'm all about. I'm about what's right, what's just.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have a justice system. We have a legal system, and it's written by greedy men.
When you see how little punishment pedophiles and child molesters get, you realize that there's not much justice in the justice system.
Well, it's again, I challenge that point and say I wouldn't even go so far as to call it a justice system. It's a legal system. And it's not geared for your protection.
Right.
It's geared for your control. Our public schools are modeled after, I don't know if you've ever heard of the Prussians.
No.
Okay, older civilization. They had an indoctrination system, admittedly designed to create a weak slave class, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
For lack of a better term, to create a slave class that the wealthy elite can steal more wealth from. Our school systems, if you take the time to look in and compare the Prussian indoctrination method with our modern school systems, you'll see far too many similarities to ignore. A video I would invite you to watch that explains this more clearly than I ever could.
Mm-hmm.
It's on YouTube. It's by Josie the Outlaw. It's called A Prison by Any Other Name. And in it, it's made poignantly clear that our children, our nieces, our nephews, our loved ones, our communities are being brainwashed en masse to bow down to a government that has no more right to exist than we do by any means.
That makes a lot of sense, because when you're a kid, you're too quick to say you're not the boss of me. And then in high school, probably 90% of the people, all of a sudden, everybody's the boss of me. But there's still those troublemakers, or the class clowns, the people that don't take the indoctrination seriously and aren't just going to bow down to some older person telling you what the fuck to do, because fuck you, you're not the boss of me. But then that's how it, and then those people graduate and move on to regular life, and that's why most general population, everybody's the boss of them, and they're cool with that.
And that's what we call sheeple or statism.
I want to save the sheeple. I want to help the sheeple. I want to bridge that gap.
I want to too, but the problem is that since TV became a real massive thing in the 50s. Okay, it's what, 2015? That's 65 years of mass media brainwashing. And you're not going to convince me that it's not controlled by governments to a very large extent, because there are 6 corporations on the whole planet that own basically every media outlet you can name.
Sarah Silverman had a funny joke. She said that she read in the paper somewhere that the Jews controlled the media, which scared her because she thought the Jews might be losing control of the media.
Oh yes, they certainly have.
She's awesome. She's hilarious. She's probably on my list. I don't think me and my wife have a list.
But I like George Carlin so far as politics go. He's got a lot of the same views.
George Carlin's on your list?
Oh yeah.
I think we're talking about different lists.
George Carlin's a comedian.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, he's great. Good stuff. So back to the travel.
Again with the traveling. What is it about the traveling you don't understand?
I understand it all. I guess I'm using it as an exemplification for other, like the whole thing in general. Just the debate between how technology's changed our lives, and the forefathers didn't really see that coming. Do you think there needs to be some sort of update, or can it really all just be boiled down to don't be a dick?
Well, here's the thing, okay? Being a realist as well as a free individual, I have to admit that there are just people in this world that, because they choose repeatedly not to make the right choice, we have no choice but to regulate them.
Mm-hmm.
But I believe there are, that is the reason why we should have our courts. Okay, this person, I pulled him over doing 100 kilometers over the limit through a school zone, drunk as a skunk, and he hit 3 cars.
Mm-hmm.
Well, absolutely, your right to travel now needs to be regulated because you've clearly demonstrated that you cannot do it properly on your own.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I'm not talking about the people who get into fender benders because it's blizzarding and shit happens.
It's
because
you're talking the
happens.
idiot.
Yeah. The guy who's got 700 horsepower and decides to take it everywhere but the fucking racetrack. Or the guy who believes himself to be a NASCAR driver and kills 3 people. Or the gravel truck driver who's smoking his weed, which is his right, but then he plows into a car full of fucking nuns because he can't handle driving on pot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? It's basically, I'm against the preventative law in so much as, I've got well over 5 million kilometers under my belt, and that's no bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
Well over 5 million kilometers under my belt before the age of 30, and I can think of 2 accidents in which I might have actually been able to avoid it had I done something different. Do you want to know how many I've been at fault for?
Yeah, that's really great, but that's the necessity of the government, is because of the idiots.
Okay, so let them single out the idiots. What is their business regulating my right to travel if I haven't given them a lawful excuse to do so?
They just assume that you're part of the system. And
when I rebut that presumption and an officer continues to try and force me into contract or commits a conspiracy against me to try and arrest me even though I've done no wrong,
I still think that he doesn't get it. He's still not getting it.
Whether he gets it or not, it's incumbent upon him, if he's going to enforce the law, to know what the law actually is.
Mm-hmm.
And if the law states that the government can only govern me by my consent, and I clearly express to him that I do not consent, what business does he have going to any extra length to try and incarcerate me?
Mm-hmm.
All it is a bullying tactic.
Oh, yeah.
You know, how dare you show these people they have rights?
Or
I'm sorry, I thought I had a duty to do that.
Yeah.
We don't just have a right to disobey unjust laws. We have a responsibility. As a nation, as an individual, as a household, as a community, you and I and everyone we know, we have an obligation when we see a law that's bullshit to say, oh yeah, watch this, fuck you, and come and get me if you really think it's worth it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'll fight you all the way to the Supreme Court. We have a duty to do that. But too many of us have been indoctrinated to the point where we won't even try.
Or are not even aware. There's too many distractions, man. There's too many pretty things. There's too many good television shows. There's too many good movies. There's too much good music. There's just so many. I have my PlayStation, man. Like, what the fuck do I want to go on the internet and look up bullshit laws for? I'm sure the government's just doing the best they can for me.
Oh, well, yes, that is the typical statist point of view. And to the people who hold to that tenet to the very point where we start getting into civil war and they decide to stick with the government that really does not represent their interests, all I have to say is this, and I'm borrowing this line, but I'm going to use it word for word. May your chains lay lightly upon you, and posterity forget that you were ever my countrymen.
It's safety. People want to be safe. The whole point of...
Benjamin Franklin said, if you're going to trade your liberty for safety, and I'm paraphrasing, but you deserve neither and will eventually lose both.
Yeah, well, who the fuck was that guy?
Benjamin Franklin?
Yeah.
He was the founder of America, one of them.
Clearly he didn't have PS4 and Big Brother.
No, he doesn't need PS4 or Big Brother. Because he wrote what he wrote in an era where, it was a struggle just to speak your mind. Now, granted, our rights have been advanced over the years.
As far as getting a voice out there, for sure.
Being able to say what you want to an extent without fear. But then you get bullshit laws like Bill C-51 and whatever the American equivalent is. You got their NSA Act and yada, 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 yada. All of it is designed specifically to usurp our rights under the pretense of law, under the pretense of protection. I don't know if you're familiar with the expression color of law.
No.
Okay, to accuse someone of operating under the color of law or persecuting under the color of law is to tell them that what they're doing has only the pretense of being legal or lawful or just. So if I were to tell an officer, you're about one accusation away from persecution under the color of law, what I'd tell that officer, what I'd be telling him in legalese, as they call it, is basically, I'm going to find you derelict in your oath, in violation of your oath, and I'm going to make sure that you don't wear that badge anymore. And that's the way it should be. No way should we be having... let's look at another example of how the police are no better than the people they claim to be controlling for the good of everyone, okay? Very recently, it's been all over the news, a bunch of Calgary officers have been caught in a sting surfing porn when they're being paid to serve and protect. Mm-hmm. And while I applaud them for taking time off of writing tickets, I don't think jacking off in their squad cars is what I'm paying them for. Mm-hmm. Is what you're paying them for. Is what the whole city of Calgary is paying them for. So, at this point, okay, you know about the police shootings, and you've agreed with me that they're, an average of 3 people dead a day on this continent. It's just too fucking many at the hands of our sworn public defenders, protectors, okay? We've got things like cops being caught smuggling drugs. We've got cops being caught in child porno rings. We've got cops being openly outed on, even on the mainstream media, the one that usually hushes this shit. They're outing these cops for this pornography, and we're not concerned why.
Our system promotes greed, so of course that's what's going to happen.
Well,
it rewards it.
What does greed have to do with these cops.
I need money.
getting
I
away
need
with
stuff.
doing what they're doing.
I need. Well, because they're still people.
Yeah, but they don't get to keep it when they write a ticket. They get a little bonus if they go way over quota. You know, undeniably.
Well, that they're doing their job very well.
Yeah, but that's the problem. The problem, Neil, is that everyone is of the mindset that these guys are supposed to be out here stealing from us. They're supposed to be out here forcing us into contracts that we have no obligation to sign.
Well, the majority think that they're out there keeping them safe, and people just want to be safe on this continent, man. That's all they want to do. They don't want to be afraid of nothing. They just want their guaranteed job. They go do their hours. They're safe. Everything's budgeted out. They're cool.
Yeah,
they don't
and then
have to
these
worry.
sad sacks of shit decide that it doesn't matter that so many of our veterans are dying homeless, broken, and fractured in the head.
Yeah, they don't see that. That's not.
They're happy to live under that blanket of protection, but they have absolutely no idea what it truly costs.
Mm-hmm.
The lucky ones in battle, my friend, the lucky ones are the ones that die. It's the ones who come home who have the real struggle.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you're not going to find a hardened combat veteran out there anywhere who's going to disagree when I say that the lucky ones are the ones that come back in a box, because it's done for them. There's no more. They don't have to worry, am I going to fall apart and lose my entire family and then wind up wanting to do nothing but pull my brains out for the rest of my days?
Mm-hmm.
Am I going to wind up at the DI eating fucking tofu ball, soup, whatever the shit they're serving that day that's been expired for a week? You know?
Yeah.
And this is the thanks that our returning soldiers get, you know?
Harper was pretty bad for veterans. He liked to send people to war, but
Didn't like to take care of them afterwards.
No.
And for what? What was our interest in that war, really?
play Little America.
That's all that was.
It's like, take your little brother.
Were we doing anything useful or meaningful to our nation there?
No.
No.
Hey, they were bullshit wars. I mean, I have no problem with veterans at all. I have no problem with the First and Second World War. It seems like they were legit. I haven't gotten into seeing if what is behind it, but it seemed legit. It was like, this motherfucker's taking over, and if we don't go fight him, it's like, he already said, I'm gonna come fucking take you over, right? So you have to go fight that one. But the bullshit wars, I hate that they're lumped in with Remembrance Day as well. Fuck.
I know. It disturbs me greatly to see.
But those people thought that they were
nowadays
doing good. They thought, their intent was good. They thought that they were doing a wonderful, very courageous thing for their country and their fellow countrymen and shit. They were sold on it. And so I don't hold it against them for being sold on it. Like,
I do. I
Do
do.
you?
Because if you're an intelligent human being and you have two eyes and a brain that functions properly, it should take nothing at all to say, hey, wait a minute, that was America that got attacked. Why are we going to die?
diplomatic bullshit, man. That's how it has to be.
And I'm very isolationist in this sense. I believe that Canada should never lose a single soldier unless they're fighting and dying to protect our soil, our nation, our people.
Right.
They have no business going over to anywhere to destroy or deal with or overthrow or set up any fucking thing. Our soldiers, if they are going to lose their lives, it should be for us.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not convinced that the shooting of the one Army reservist was actually a targeted event by ISIS or anyone else. I am, however, convinced that this was a very piss-poor attempt by Stephen Harper to do a false flag on us.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay? If he wanted to make it convincing, he should have dropped a tower.
Mm-hmm.
Preferably the biggest police building in the country. That's my suggestion. Hey, you want to get people on your side? Give the cop suckers something to rally behind.
Shit's gonna happen.
Oh, eventually. It's inevitable.
And the way that they're going to use the human spirit, you were saying earlier that you have faith in the human spirit, but they're going to use that human spirit against humans. They're going to false flag the entire planet, and everyone is going to show human spirit and rally together, and
global government.
It's done. We're done.
New World Order.
Aliens are going to attack, and it's not going to be aliens attacking. And everybody's just going to flip because they're scared. People are all scared. It's exactly what's going on all the time. People are scared and frightened, and they just want to be safe. Which, you can't blame people for that, man. You can't blame them for wanting to be safe.
If they're wanting to be safe infringes upon my right to be free, yeah, absolutely.
But you're still free to do stuff. You just, have to play by some rules.
Oh, yeah. Let's play by the rules. Let's give damn near 50% of everything I bust my ass for to a government that doesn't represent me just because you want to feel safe. Show me how that makes any sense when you're standing in my shoes.
I think the biggest problem is that I don't see Freeman working if everybody was just that. I don't see anarchy working if we just switched on a dime, and I don't see the present system working either. None of these work.
The Freeman thing,
why not just stick with what's going on?
The Freeman thing mixed with a little bit of communism actually is about the best thing I can think of. And by communism, I don't mean the theft and redistribution of wealth.
Mm-hmm.
What I mean is where people keep what they work so hard for and pay for what they need. Okay, we're going to need the roads done in the next 5 years, so everybody's got to put in $56 a month to get the road done in 4 or 5 years' time.
So your idealness would be this mix of Freemanism and communism to a point where, but money would still exist?
I don't see a way out of the monetary system. I see a way where it can be changed, where it can be tweaked. And
what the fuck is that? That's not none of my devices.
Ooh, well that does sound interesting, but that is just gonna have to wait. Girlfriend wants a little action.
Mm-hmm.
I digress. Where were we? Freemanism with a little bit of communism. To the extent where people
without money, like do you?
Oh yes. To change the monetary system. Well, for lack of a better way to describe it, would be to an extent we would have to go back to some kind of a money, if you will. But does it have to be with privatized central banks?
No, it can be Bitcoin.
Yeah, no, it can be something we, the people, create. It's distributed fairly amongst us. We survive on that.
Right.
It doesn't have to be a greed thing. Now, if you want to go the extra mile, you want to, create a product people wish to buy and you sell millions of units, great. Good for you. You made your $3 million this year.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we're going to want to assess you a little bit more than Joe Blow, who made $30,000.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody will pay a proportional amount based on their earnings into a community fund.
Business isn't going to come to your country. They're going to go to some other country where they don't have to pay that much taxes.
The change would have to be global.
Yeah, it definitely. Are you familiar with the Venus Project and the Zeitgeist movement?
1984 and everything else.
Oh, the changing of the definitions?
Yeah.
You should. Can you explain that? Because I'm too dumb to explain that. I've tried to.
I'm not sure that's somewhere I care to touch. I don't know that I'm well enough informed. I tell you, on the subject of the changing of definitions, if you want to talk about sneaky and underhanded, the Freeman movement started on the tenet that the definition of traveling, and in older versions of Black's Law this is true, the legal definition of traveling, which they're forced to operate under, because that's what they do, The legal definition of traveling is different from that of driving. The legal definition of driving in the older edition of Black's Law is one employed while operating a motor vehicle, motor coach, or carriage. And if you weren't being employed, as in being paid to sit behind that wheel and travel that stretch of road, if you weren't being specifically paid for that trip, then what you're doing, in our eyes, constitutes traveling, which is a charter protected action. And
so when you're paid to travel, you become a driver.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Whether it's to transport a person or a piece of property or some goods or whatever, unless you're being paid to be behind that wheel, to our mind, to our way of thinking, that falls under the purview of traveling.
What about today's definition? What's today's definition?
Today's definition of a driver is anyone operating a motor vehicle, and it's interesting that that definition has been changed.
When was that changed? Do you know?
Not long ago. It's been, one or two editions ago, I think, it would have been changed.
Is there anything in the charter that says that it all has to be referenced off of the definitions in the time that it was written, or can they just, it has to be off of definitions of any dictionary?
You look at any piece of case law, any court decision, anything that you can find on the Canada Law website. All of it, for each individual case, has its own definitions. Okay, you read any act or statute, it will have definitions for certain words in that piece of legislation that would have completely different meanings in any other context. So yes, they use the Black's Law definitions for a lot of the officers' training in this country, and it's conceding certain words at a roadside stop that immediately tie you in as a consenting citizen. Okay, so
what does that mean?
So in my video, RCMP Epic Fail, as I described, the officer asked me if I had a license, and I said, well, no, why would I trade my rights for benefits and privileges?
See, he doesn't understand that at all. You're kind of jumping ahead on him there. Like, you're treating him like it's commonplace that he should run into Freeman all the time, where they're like, no, why would I do that?
In BC it should be, honestly, because that's really where our movement got its footing and where it has most of its stories. I'll share with you a Freeman success story that no one ever publicizes. There is a YouTube channel called I Practice What I Preach, all one word. And this gentleman had a run-in with the Coquitlam RCMP, wherein they smashed his window because he tried to make the same arguments I made, presumably without a proper video recording device. And the subsequent videos to this fiasco, this debacle he encountered, they show him speaking with the watch commander at the Coquitlam detachment, and basically running through the case law that he knew and the beliefs that he stood under. And the only thing that watch commander could say to him was, well, what if everyone else believed as you do? Well, basically he said, I believe this world would be a better place. People wouldn't be working their lives away to give everything away to the government. People wouldn't be forced into contracts that they don't need or don't consent to. For example, if I've gone X number of kilometers without causing an accident, being the listed at-fault party in an accident, who is anyone to tell me I'm obligated to insure myself for liability purposes? Quite clearly, I've demonstrated that it's just the opposite. I'm anything but a liability.
Yeah, I don't know. It still sounds like you don't really have a problem with the systems. You have a problem with what they've done with the systems, and this is just your form of protest.
It's more than a form of protest. I would like to see more individuals with a like mind to my own rise up and do the same thing.
Nobody's going to trade in their health care and think that if I get in an accident, then I could go down for attempted murder. That's scary. That's scary. No health care, and I might...
That should only be scary if you have that much to hide as a person. If you are that poor of a vehicle operator and
there are a lot of very poor vehicle operators out there.
And that's what hearings are for, to make a decision. Okay, in the U.S., and this is the way it ought to be done. Okay, if your right to bear arms is going to be revoked, it has to be done by a court.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so why not the same idea here? If you're going to force regulations upon my right to travel, because in the U.S. you don't need a permit to own a gun, you have that inalienable right.
Mm-hmm.
Here we have a listed right to travel with our property and to be secure and travel unmolested. Okay, so if you're going to abrogate or try and somehow violate that right for me, you need to show me that you have a lawful excuse to do so. If I haven't signed a contract with your government, if I haven't allowed a contract to continue once I discovered that there was fraud behind it, or fraud by omission, or whatever have you, then there's no officer in this nation that has any business forcing me to have contracts with their government. That's called tyranny, it's called slavery, and it's illegal in this country.
Yeah, it's a perspective. You gotta switch your perspective around a little bit.
Well,
but I still don't think anybody's gonna. I think everybody likes the benefits.
Well, they last. It's like you said earlier, a day is quickly coming, and I've said for years now, a day is approaching when the sheeple in this country, they're going to have to make a choice. Clearly the government doesn't want us to be free anymore. They think we need to be regulated at every turn. Am I going to bow down to this, or am I going to stand up and say, go fuck yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Me, I'll stand up and say, go fuck yourself.
Yeah. All right, well, we should probably take a break.
Yeah. I could use a joint. I really could. Ugh. Sit. Bella, sit. Good girl, stay.
All right, cool. So basically, I don't feel like people are going to revoke their benefits for their privileges or whatever. What advice do you have for these people who they agree that the system isn't where it should be and it's not being used properly, but they don't want to leave the system? What do they do inside the system to try and help?
Well, to start with, you put the fear of God into cops like they do into you. There's, I don't know exactly the section, and actually there was a Facebook post about it by the Calgary Police lately. Somewhere under the Police Services Act, if an officer pulls you over at the side of the road, you have every right to demand that he produce 3 forms of identification, and he has an obligation to produce all 3.
So that's something you should do right there, just to assert some form of
just right away
standing
that
up for
officer
yourself.
Knows that he's dealing with a man instead of a
sheeple.
Yeah.
Yeah, this guy at least knows his rights. Like, I need 3. So that's step number 1, is tell the cop that you want 3 pieces of ID: a business card, his badge number,
and a photo identification card, government issued, with an address for service should that need arise.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And right there, that tells that cop that you've got his number. You will hold him accountable for every word, every action.
And you of course want to videotape it.
Every time an officer approaches you, on foot, in a vehicle, in an airport, doesn't matter. You put a camera in his face, and if he tells you you don't have a right to, you tell him bullshit.
Now,
he's a public servant in a public place and has zero reasonable expectation of privacy in the performance of his public duties, his or her. There.
Can you make that a little easier for someone to remember? What do they say? They can't say bullshit, and whatever you said after that was too wordy for the average person. Basically, you're in a public space.
You're a public servant performing public duties. I have every right to film you.
Because
You
we're in
have
public.
no expectation of privacy.
Right, there's no privacy in
I'm a
public.
private citizen. I have a right to privacy, even in a public place. And here's, for those of you who can remember it, here's a piece of case law that supports that. If a cop tries to film you in a public place, well, no. R versus Buhay says that even in a public place, unless I am demonstrably acting in a public or official role, my Section 7 right to privacy remains intact.
I thought when you were in public, people could just film you all they want.
You can film a public place.
Mhm.
Nothing saying you can't set up a camera and watch a public servant doing his job, or watching people pass by. But the moment you start following and filming a particular individual, if they ask you not to, they're not engaging you in a conversation, then you have to leave them alone.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
It's if they're going to engage you in a conversation in a public place, well, actually, even if it's in their private property, they can ask you to leave. They can't ask you not to film.
Okay, so 3 forms of ID.
Yes.
What was the second one? You got me.
Always film.
Always film.
Always film.
And if they say that you can't film, then you say that you're a public servant in a public place and not allowed to film in public.
And if they quote wiretapping laws, you just remind them that that very same law states that as long as one party consents to the conversation being recorded, it's perfectly legal. By the way, officer, I consent to recording this conversation I'm in.
Okay, that's a good one. Okay, and at that point, do you give them your license and registration? Because you're in the system, right? You're working within the system.
If you're working within the system, yes, you give them your license and registration. If you're
After you've already set some parameters and let them know that you're in charge.
And you share with them that at no time do you consent to waive any of your inalienable rights, any of your charter protected rights. You will insist that they be upheld to the utmost as per their oath. Sorry, like Twitch. And if they start asking you about your oath, tell them, well, you can basically pick any one of the 3 that you take, but I'd prefer you stick to the one that says you're going to uphold and defend the charter.
That sounds like a lot.
It's really not hard to remember. I don't consent to any statutes that violate my charter rights today.
Is the charter like the 10 Commandments?
The charter is the 10 Commandments of the government, yeah.
Is there 10?
It is the superior and supreme law in this nation, and it says so in the charter and in the Constitution Act, consolidated 1867 through 1982. Okay, sections 32 and 52. Between the two of them, basically what they say is that the government doesn't exist without the power of your consent. And that for a government to force or coerce your consent is tantamount to tyranny.
Right. Because that's what they were fighting against.
That's right.
That's what they fought to be
the
free.
end of the British tyranny.
Yeah.
And instead what we've wound up with is the Canadian tyranny.
Yes. So you still abide by the law of the land, but it's just the old law, right? It's the original
it's the old law.
It's the original. The one that has been fuckered with because
more
of
Magna Carta
new definitions and
Criminal
corporate
Code of
lawyers and
Yeah.
all the kinds of ways that it's been
motions,
perverted.
revisions, definitions, all of it means nothing to me. What's mine is mine. You can't have it. You want to come take it by force, I'll take your life. I don't care. I'll lay down my life defending what's mine.
The Charter is the 10 Commandments of North America.
Well, it's the 10 Commandments of Canada. The U.S. has its Constitution. We abolished the Constitution in the Constitution Act in favor of the Charter. The Charter is Canada's supreme law these days. That anything passed that is inconsistent with the Charter, to the extent of its inconsistency, it's of no force or effect.
It's funny how they never really ever taught that. It seems like a very basic
Well, they
thing.
wouldn't want you to know that. That takes away their control. That takes away their power. If too many people back in the 70s and 80s had known, hey, I can opt out of being treated like a fucking pawn, like a sheep, like a piggy bank.
But Tim, the schools are there for your own good. They're there to teach you life skills so that you can get a
Life
good
skills
job.
is one thing. But the thing is, in a public school, you're not actually graded on what you learn. You are graded primarily on how well you can take an order. Okay, if that is not brainwashing, what is?
So this is a funny story. In grade 7, my math teacher said if you miss doing your homework over 20 times, then you get a 0 for the whole term. And I don't do homework. Fuck. So I didn't, and he gave me a 0 for the term. I just let it go. I thought it was fun. What do I care, right?
Yeah.
So I end up getting pulled into the principal's office unknowingly with the teacher, and the principal was like, "What the fuck is this?" And he explained why the 0 existed. And the principal said, "You can't do that. All you can do is give him a 0 on like the homework portion of the overall grade. You can't just give him a 0 at all." And so he was forced to just give me a 0 on the homework portion. I still got like a 70 or something, and it was fucking stupid. Just trying to be a dick, you know?
Just wants you to follow his orders, and that's exactly what it is, man. It's indoctrination. They don't care necessarily. I mean, they obviously go out of their way to make real good indoctrinees popular. Oh, look at this honor roll, so and so, right. Good.
The honor students. I never even thought about it as the word, you know, like the honor students.
Yeah, you know, and they get all swollen chested, and I'm like, great. You've learned how to be somebody's bitch. Show me how that serves you as a man.
It's too bad there isn't a Freeman school. I would send my child to the Freeman school.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Just, you know, actual education. I don't know how many times I've been out in life, and you just look up to the sky and say, why didn't they teach this to me? Why did nobody tell me about this shit?
Here's another thing about these public schools that just drives me up the fucking wall and makes me weep for the future of our children, okay? Let's say you got a kid, a bear, a cat, a flea, and a goldfish. And their standardized test is every one of them has to climb a tree. Well, that goldfish, he might be a genius, but he's going to spend his life thinking he's a fucking retard.
Mm-hmm.
And that is exactly what our public schools produce.
Yeah, kids are pretty horrible, too. They
you can either take these orders, or you're just not built this way, and you're useless to our society. That's exactly what they tell you.
Yep. It's not very cool. All right, so I guess I'm still on the what are we? Is that just it? People should they should read at least the charter. Is it quick? Is it like 10 Commandments?
Charter itself is not long, but if you really want to get into the
nobody does.
Well, you yourself said you wound up for at least a night there, falling down a little bit of a rabbit hole.
That's
How
me.
far did you get? How far did you get? What did you land up with?
Scratch the surface.
Did you get into any of this case law or the charter or constitutional law I'm quoting to you? Okay, do me a favor. Go on your little cool puller-upper thingy there.
I can't do videos.
You don't have to do a video.
All right.
Let's pull up the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Type in Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
Tell us what a fee schedule is while I do it.
A fee schedule? Okay, well, that typically incorporates 3 to 4 articles. My own is only 3 articles. And it charges a rate per hour or portion thereof for various things that we're forced to do against our will, such as sit at the side of the road, aka unlawful detention, or produce documentation, aka extortion, or arrest, aka false arrest, or use of force, aka assault. Okay? So for me, I just do arrest and assault are the same thing. To be locked in a cage without a lawful excuse, that's the same thing as being accosted with a weapon. So Article 1, detention. My fee schedule starts at $5,000 per hour, a portion thereof. Article 2, extortion, starts at $50,000 per hour.
Who sets these? You just get to
set these.
Whatever number you want?
My time is worth if you're going to force me into contract with your government, with whom I hold no contracts.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to force me into a contract. You're going to violate the right you swore to protect for my right to freedom of association.
Have you gotten arrested?
Whether or not. Oh.
No?
Oh.
No. Fuck, man.
High on mushrooms,
Try harder.
no license
Try
plates,
harder.
they just wouldn't go. They could not. And actually, it's funny because you can't hear it in the video, but at one point I could hear that cop say, fuck, I wanted it to come back stolen. I so wanted to pull that fucking door open and tell him, get out, you're under arrest.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And again, I say, how is that not a conspiracy to harm a man who has done nothing to anyone?
Because you're not playing by the rules, motherfucker.
Those are your rules.
They don't even...
Show me some proof that I'm obligated to play by those rules.
They don't even understand that you don't have to play by the rules. They think anybody that's not playing by the rules is breaking the fucking rules.
That's not that I'm breaking the rules, it's that they don't bind me unless I've got a signature on a contract somewhere with the government saying, yeah, I'll take your protection and in exchange you can tell me what to do.
This is even shorter than the...
Than you thought it would be?
It's not even 10. It's the 6 commandments. Oh, it's just Charter, Rights and Freedoms, Constitution Act, 1982. That's what we're going off of, 1982?
And
this is the Canadian website, and they've kind of hacked things up a little bit and just given brief things. So this is just the... here are some protections that the Charter guarantees. They don't want to tell you all of them because that would be too hard. So here's the 6 that they think are important. Freedom of religion, of thought, of expression, of the press, and of peaceful assembly.
Okay, you're on Parliament. Okay, what you need to do is access the Charter as it's available through, type this in, www.canlii.org. It should be the Canada Law website.
Shut your phone up. Put it on the silent.
There.
On the mute. The girlfriend wants the dick.
On the mute. There we go. Okay, so.
Français or anglais?
Anglais, s'il vous plaît. Okay, so now, type in Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
What are we looking at? What's this page?
This is the Canada Law website. This is where you can find any piece of case law that pertains to any legal question you might have. Now, of course, this is all subject to a judge's interpretation, but there's very strong case law supporting what I'm talking about, what I'm suggesting.
No.
Legislation title. Try typing it in on the second line.
Here.
6 older versions, so you can see quite clearly that this has been changed quite a few times.
Have you ever looked in to see how it's been changed?
No, actually, I haven't necessarily had time for that of late, between owning a business and hosting karaoke in the evenings, but...
Version in force.
Yeah, let's access the version in force. Let's see how just disgustingly worded it is to... Because I can almost guarantee you, with as many times as I've read the Charter, I bet you I see some discrepancies between the old version and the new. And the new.
And the new version.
Getting the beer tongue there where it, starts to stumble over it. So, see, now you know why I don't drink when I sing. I'd be standing up there. Alright, see, here we have a proper readable format. Now,
therefore, Her
let's
Majesty
read the preamble first before we get to Her Majesty the Queen. Let's scroll up to the top and read through the whole.
It sounds like she's saving your ass. Because if we're bound by Her Majesty bullshit and all that fucking charter time crap, if they got rid of that, what do we have left here?
Well, exactly. Okay, so therefore Her Majesty... Okay, yeah, let's read all of it. Whereas every human being possesses intrinsic rights and freedoms designed to ensure his protection and development. Whereas all human beings are equal in worth and dignity and are entitled to equal protection of the law. Whereas the respect for the dignity of human beings, equality of women and men, and the recognition of their rights and freedoms constitute the foundation of justice, liberty, and peace, whereas the rights and freedoms of human person are inseparable from the rights and freedoms of others and from the common well-being. Whereas it is expedient to solemnly declare the fundamental rights and freedoms in a charter so that they may be guaranteed by the collective will and better protected against any violation. Therefore, Her Majesty, with the advice and consent of the National Assembly of Quebec, enact as follows. Human rights and freedoms and fundamental freedoms and rights. Right to life. 1. Every human being has a right to life and to personal security, inviolability, and freedom. Let's pause there for a second and Google search the definition of inviolable.
Oh, we can't get into a rabbit hole. How many of these are there? Now there's a lot. Look at all this.
Yeah, it's 6 commandments on the government's website on the official page. When you actually go to find the real version, it's a...
What?
It's a whole different story. There's also a rights and freedoms PDF you can download.
Oh, buddy, no, look, there you go. I got a video. I can't watch it right now, but I'm gonna
4-minute video on the charter.
Oh, don't, that's hitting.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, it's alright.
4-minute video on the charter. You'd probably not learn a quarter of what it has to teach.
Well, it's still more than other people are doing. Don't judge me.
I digress. We've shown them now at least where you can find that. The Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
It's an interesting website. I like that website. You could definitely spend some time on there.
Well, let's go back to that website for a second.
People don't have
I want
time
to just
for this,
show
though.
you some interesting, just real quick, something that you can use.
Where was it? Where'd you need me to
go? Go back one page.
Zip.
One more.
Zip.
Okay, now scroll up to the top.
Very top? Okay.
Very top. Okay, there should be a search somewhere. Click on to change the parameters of your search. Maybe click back once more. Once more. Okay. Type in under case law, whichever one says case law. You'll have to clear the search field on both, I think.
I think it's the top one.
Case name. Okay. Space V space Alexander. One we're looking for is Court of Appeal Ontario.
Which one?
Actually, we should be looking for Superior Court of Ontario. Type in Justice Young.
Where? Here?
Yeah, same place. R.V. Alexander, Justice Young.
Oh.
I should have said add in Justice Young.
What is it?
R.V. Alexander.
Set up what we're gonna be finding. Nope, they didn't find any.
Okay, obviously they've taken it off, and actually it's probably because a few of us have been pushing the piece of legislation, or case law rather. Basically the case law involves a man named Jaron Alexander in Ontario. He was pulled over without a lawful excuse. And because the officer had no lawful excuse for pulling the man over, detaining him, searching him, any of that, he got away not only with 27.2 grams of crack cocaine. That charge was dropped because it was fruit of the poisonous tree. But he also got away with pulling a board off of a plank fence and beating the officer with it in order to effect his escape. It was ruled that he had a charter-protected right to defend himself against an unlawful detention or arrest.
Can the regular person do that? No.
Jaron Alexander was just a regular person, drug dealer or not. He made a constitutional or a charter argument against the initial stop in the first place, and it was found that the officer did not have a lawful excuse to initiate that contact.
So you can use that while working within the system.
Yes.
So being educated is
27.2 grams of crack cocaine, and he beat a cop with a board off of a fence. And all charges dismissed because the officer had no lawful excuse to.
Which is the
upon his
extreme.
rights.
It's just saying that when your rights are violated up to that extreme, but most people aren't interested. I'm not interested in getting away with having crack on me.
No,
you know?
me neither.
But that's the extreme, and that's how many rights he has, and those rights extend to somebody on that extreme.
Of course.
So you in your everyday life, when you get your rights violated, you can still stand up for yourself.
Of course, now C-51 makes you a terrorist for that.
Yeah, probably.
Before you could do that. Pre-Harper, you could do that. Since Harper took office and left it, and I don't know what Trudeau's going to do if he's any kind of decent human being. He's going to repeal 50.
I don't know if it was even Harper. It might have just been whoever was in power at this time would have had to put it through, kind of deal. Like, it seems like a Harper thing to do because it's pretty douchey, but
Harper actually did a lot of the penning for C-51 if you do your research.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, he's a dumbass. I hate him. I'm so glad he's gone. I can't believe 10
I cannot necessarily believe that Trudeau's going to do much
vote?
better.
Do Freeman vote?
No. Freemen do not vote. They do not legitimize a system that they do not participate in.
Right. That makes sense.
I don't vote. I don't pay an income tax, but I do pay taxes. Mm-hmm. Every time I fill my vehicle, I pay a tax at the pump, or every time I buy a pack of cigarettes, and sometimes it's 2 a day. Mm-hmm. I pay a healthcare tax by the government's own admission. The reason they're jacking up the price of cigarettes, it's a healthcare tax. Well, okay. Stop fucking charging me for my ambulance trips, you cunts.
Makes sense.
And pardon my language to those of you who may be offended by it, but as a person who was not that long ago diagnosed with lung cancer, I believe again, the beer, tongue tying, yada yada. I believe that this life is far too short to give two flying fucks what anyone else thinks. I will speak my mind as succinctly as possible when I'm angry, and that's just as honest as I can be.
Well, I appreciate the fact that you're out there standing up for yourself. At least it's something that they come across maybe once or twice. It's nice to know that there's people out there standing up for not giving a fuck.
And here's the funny part is I used to want to be a police officer.
Yeah.
I used to believe that they had our best interests at heart, that they kept the bad guys at bay, and that they were truly here just to protect us.
I'm sure they believe that, though. You know what I mean? If you had done it, you would go in under that, and you'd slowly be indoctrinated with what it actually is, and us versus them fucking shit. But all the crap that they go through, and the lack of training at the same time, like... It's not a cool job. It's not a good job to have.
Here's the funny thing. Okay, you're going to mention training. Here's a point I'd like to bring up from my video. At one point, you'll hear me question the officer about a legal definition in Black's Law Dictionary that, as far as I'm aware, today has not changed. The legal definition of the word understand. Do you know what it is?
I don't, and I don't even know what
as used by lawyers, the word understand usually means to stand under or to acquiesce to. So when a cop says to you, I pulled you over for this, this, and this, do you understand? And you say yes. What you're really saying is, yeah, okay, I'll bow to that.
Oh, don't roll your window down. That's a good one to tell people. Or just to tell
1 inch. If you can hear their voice, they can hear yours, and documentation can be passed through. That's the only obligation you have. You do not have to unlock your door. You do not have to turn your motor off.
In fact, you should lock your door.
Oh, yeah. Lock your doors like a motherfucker. Make sure that because they will try and pull on your door. As soon as you question their jurisdiction, as soon as you question their authority, as soon as you say to them, hey, I am not your government's property. I'm not their piggy bank. They're going to try to pull on door handles. They did it to me in my video. At one point, you'll hear me say, and I quote, do not attempt to enter my vehicle, please. Mm-hmm. And the cop in the video that was actually on the camera straight out lied and said they're not attempting to enter your vehicle. Well, that's horseshit, because I heard them pulling on my fucking door handles.
Yeah, of course.
Now, what's that about? I've clearly and already told them this is my property. Please don't touch it. The affidavit I handed that guy. They would just
yanked you right out.
The affidavit I handed to Officer Ferguson when he walked up, one of the things that said in it was, "Do not attempt to enter this vehicle. All implied rights of access have been expressly revoked by this document." So for them to go and try and pull on that door handle, if they weren't indemnified by the government and if they were you or me, just average private Joe citizen, I gave them that warning on a piece of paper and they pulled the door handle anyway, I would constitute an attempt to break and enter. Okay, you and I would be charged with, attempted home invasion or whatever, attempted vehicle theft, attempted this, attempted that, just for pulling on a door handle after that. But no, for some reason they get away with that shit. I've done nobody any harm.
Because everybody else is compliant, just like the girl said on your video.
Everybody else is compliant with the law and has their documentation with them. Oh yeah, didn't realize I rolled through into Nazi fucking Germany. What is this, 1941? Fuck you.
It did seem pretty crazy. I recommend anybody watch the video. It's pretty hilarious.
RCMP epic fail. Doesn't matter. YouTube, Google search. It's the first thing that pops up. 13 minutes, 41 seconds. Timothy Freeman, House of Anderson.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. All right, man. Well, thanks a lot for coming in and doing this.
No worries. Who knows? Maybe the podcast will raise some questions. We'll get some viewers that want to know some things. Feel free to take notes. I'll be happy to come back.
I got other stuff. Oh yeah, there's so much. I tried to keep some sort of order and train without just freely going everywhere.
Yeah, we should have left the pot and beer out of it for that one.
I don't know.
Well, no, if you want me to be coherent and linear,
no, I want you to be real.
We need to keep the pot and beer in it.
I like the realism. All right, brother. Well, until next time.
Alrighty.
Oh, I guess the only place to find you is on the YouTube?
Yeah, it's just the one video right now.
You don't do the Twitter or anything like that?
Nope. I have a Facebook account, but due to trolls and COINTELPRO, I basically very limited friends list and my privacy settings cranked up.
Right. You need to make an alter ego. A digital alter ego. A corporate alter ego.
Sounds like... sounds too much like assuming a government name,
It does. It sounds pretty serious.
I'm just me. I'm free. You don't like it? Suck it.
Good end.